The lanterns flicker against the crisp October night, their glow trembling like fragile fire in the dark. Outside, the wind claws at the last fallen leaves, dragging them across the ground like secrets that refuse to rest. It is Halloween, but not the one of candy and costumes you know. Tonight, we step into 1890, a time when shadows stretched longer, when the old country's traditions still gripped tightly, when even the air itself seemed alive with mystery. So, settle in, pull your blanket close, let your mind ease into the quiet, for the story you're about to hear will carry you into a Halloween unlike any you've ever known. The lamps are dim, the hearth is warm, and the voices of the past are ready to rise once again. And before we begin, if you enjoy these lantern-lit journeys into history, I invite you to subscribe to History to Sleep. Each week, we breathe life into forgotten tales of holidays and traditions long past. Together we create a space where time softens, where stories come alive again, and where you can let your eyes close as you drift into other centuries. The year is 1890, a moment balanced between two ages. The modern world is beginning to stir. In the great cities, electric lights spark to life for the first time. Bicycles rattle across cobblestones with a metallic clatter. Newspapers spread stories faster than ever before. And yet, the old ways remain firmly in place. Families still gather by the hearth, reading aloud by the glow of lamps. Horse-drawn wagons rumble along crowded roads. Villages lie quiet beneath the autumn moon, much as they had for centuries before. It is a season of change, suspended between tradition and progress. And on Halloween night, that sense of being caught in between feels strongest of all. For to the people of 1890, this night is not just a game. It is a time filled with hushed superstitions, playful rituals, and a touch of unease. In parlor rooms, young women peel apples and toss the skins over their shoulders, hoping the fallen shapes will spell the name of a future husband. In the kitchen, nuts roast in the fire, their crackling said to reveal whether love will last or fade away. Outside, boys wander the streets carrying lanterns not carved from pumpkins, but from turnips, daring each other into tricks that blur the line between mischief and menace. But there is no need to hurry. This is not a night to rush through fleeting images. It is a night to linger, to let the past breathe slowly back to life. Each sound, each scent, each flicker of light draws us deeper into the heart of Halloween. The story we step into is not a single tale, but a tapestry of moments woven together. The laughter of children running through narrow lanes, ghost stories told in hushed voices beside the fire, the scent of roasted apples and cider drifting through the air, the scrape of boots over damp cobblestones. You are there among them, as though you've crossed through a doorway in time. Close your eyes if you wish. Let the noise of the present fade away. The year is 1890. The night is All Hallows' Eve. Lamps tremble in the cold wind. Hearths glow warmly, and the veil between worlds feels thinner than ever before. The month of October is nearly at its end. Twilight has drained from the sky, leaving behind only a silver glow clinging faintly to the horizon. The air is cool and sharp, carrying the scent of chimney smoke as you step outside with a lantern in hand. Its soft glow circles your path, while the world around you slips into shadow. The cobblestones glisten from the dampness of the day, catching the wavering light of the gas lamps that line the road. These lamps sputter and hiss, glowing in uneven halos of gold that quickly fade into darkness. One moment the way is clear, the next it is swallowed by shadow. Even the brick walls of shops and houses appear to shift, swelling and shrinking with each flicker of flame inside the glass globes. From the main street comes the rhythmic sound of hooves. A horse pulls a carriage at an unhurried pace. Its driver hunches beneath a heavy coat, collar turned up against the chill. The wheels grind faintly against stone, echoing into the night. A gust of wind lifts the curtain at the carriage window, revealing the pale outline of a face before the fabric falls back. The sound drifts away, leaving the street once again wrapped in stillness. Shutters close along the sidewalks. Shopkeepers finish their work, locking doors and sweeping thresholds before retreating inside. A key turns with a sharp click. A wooden sign creaks as it swings in the breeze. A distant dog barks into the night. Every sound is crisp, carried farther in the cool autumn air. The city is not asleep, but its tone has shifted. Daytime clamor has given way to a strange expectancy, as if the air itself holds its breath. Not all voices belong to adults ending their work. Down a narrow lane, a group of boys slips between doorways. Quick-footed and restless, they carry lanterns carved from hollowed turnips, each face jagged and rough. Candlelight flickers inside, giving the grimaces a grotesque life of their own. Their laughter rises and falls, hushed with sudden urgency. A gate groans as it's lifted from its hinges. A rope is stretched across a walkway at knee height, hidden in the gloom. Their tricks are daring, playful, yet edged with mischief. The night belongs as much to them as to the families gathered inside. Beyond the city, Halloween changes its tone. In the countryside, lanterns are scarce, roads unpaved, and homes scattered wide apart. Darkness reigns unbroken. Cornstalks, cut low after harvest, stand pale beneath the moonlight. An owl calls from the rafters of a barn, its wings tearing the silence like cloth. The sharp cry of a fox drifts over the fields, with no lamps to soften the blackness. The stars blaze brighter, constellations glittering coldly over the earth. Here the night feels more solemn. Superstitions cling closer, a shutter banging in the wind, leaves scraping against a door, even the squeak of a mouse in the granary. Each is a sign that something unseen may be drawing near. Some families kindle small fires outside, remnants of old rituals meant to ward off restless spirits. Others hang sprigs of rowan or scatter salt across thresholds. In the countryside, without the comfort of lamps or neighbors close at hand, Halloween feels more like a night of omen. Yet, whether in the gaslit city or in the hushed countryside, the essence of Halloween in 1890 is the same. A threshold between the ordinary and the otherworldly. It is no longer the fire-lit solemnity of centuries past, but neither is it yet the modern holiday of sugar and costumes. It is a night suspended between mischief and reverence. Consider the people who walk these streets. Women hurry home, skirts sweeping the damp stones, wool and cotton gowns buttoned to the throat, sleeves puffed at the shoulder in the latest style. Cloaks shield them from the chill. Men stride past in dark coats and stiff collars, bowler hats pulled low. Shoes shine, though already dulled by evening mist. Children linger behind, wearing masks of stiff paper or stitched cloth. Disguises more for anonymity than decoration. For one night, they thrill at being mistaken for shadows or spirits. In one row house along the street, light spills warmly from the windows. Lace curtains are pulled back just enough to reveal the amber glow inside. Silhouettes move through the parlor, a hostess arranging chairs, guests removing coats, children darting past with quick laughter. When the door opens briefly, the strains of a piano float out along with the scent of nutmeg and roasted apples. But we remain outside a moment longer. Wagon wheels scrape faintly in the distance. Boots scuff against the stones. Leaves scatter like whispers along the ground. This is the crossing point of times. Behind us lies the old world of superstition, with bonfires and charms passed down through generations. Ahead is the modern century, promising electric light, organized gatherings, and in time, the candy-filled celebrations we know today. But tonight belongs wholly to 1890, half familiar, half forgotten, alive with expectation and shadows that seem deeper than usual. Raise your lantern. The street ahead darkens, but in the distance one house shines brightly. Laughter drifts faintly from its windows. Inside, fortunes will be told, games will be played, and ghost stories will stir the imagination. That is where we go next. The door opens with a gentle pull, and warmth spills out like a golden tide. The hall glows with lamplight, scented with clove, candle smoke, and something sweet. Perhaps baked apples cooling in the kitchen. The hostess greets you softly, her voice low, as though the house itself prefers quiet. Your lantern is set upon a small table, and you step into a home where the sharp edge of night has been softened by warmth and music. The entry is narrow and orderly. Wool coats hang from pegs, still damp from the mist. A porcelain umbrella stand painted with blue swallows and ivy rests beneath them. Beyond the glass transom, the parlor opens wide in color and pattern. Deep wine wallpaper flocked in velvet, gilded frames catching sparks of light, and a thick rug strewn with woven roses. The fire hums faintly in the grate, iron tiles shining, cinders popping as the room breathes with the glow of flame. Guests are already gathered. Young men in polished waistcoats, trousers pressed with sharp creases, watch chains glinting at their vests. Young women in high-necked gowns of wool and silk, trimmed with lace and ribbons at the collar. Their cheeks warmed pink from the cold, gloves slip into pockets or vanish into small purses. It is not a formal ball, but every polished shoe and neat cuff shows care in appearance. On the sideboard rests a simple still life for the season. Bowls of apples, russets, Baldwins, greenings, each piled high. A plate of ginger biscuits. A glass dish filled with walnuts and hazelnuts. A jug of spiced cider with slices of lemon floating near the glass. Dried sprigs of tansy and wheat tucked among the dishes. Mark the season without excess. No paper cutouts or garish bats. Victorian taste leans towards suggestion, not spectacle. A small turnip lantern sits discreetly on the mantel, its crooked little smile wavering in the firelight. In the corner, a piano waits. A young man in round spectacles dusts its keys with a brief flourish before slipping into a gentle waltz, something light enough to float quietly beneath the evening's talk. A cousin hums, another taps a foot in careful time, not to scuff the polished floors. The music threads through the room, not performance but presence, stitching conversation together. Voices stay on safe topics, at least to begin. A novel borrowed from the lending library, the rising cost of coal, a rumor that a downtown street may soon test electric lights. Bicycles come up, their speed praised, their posture condemned by scandalized aunts who insist young ladies will ruin their spines with such contraptions. Gentle laughter ripples, smiles all around. Cider is sipped, biscuits are passed, and the clock on the mantel ticks with steady purpose. The hostess claps her hands softly, more suggestion than command. "Shall we begin?" she asks. The parlor brightens, not with wattage but with spirit. A few games to mark the season, then perhaps a story or two. Heads nod, fans fold shut. The piano lid falls closed. Conversation settles. A ceramic basin is brought forth, rimmed with ivy, placed on a low table draped in white. Fresh water is poured, catching the lamp's glow, shivering with ripples. Apples follow, red, green, mottled, bobbing like small boats upon the water. Not every household approves of such games. Some call them inelegant, but here the spirit of the night is allowed its splash. A cousin volunteers first, grinning as she kneels. Napkin tucked at her collar. She dips and misses, bursts up laughing, droplets scattering. On her second try, she secures a Baldwin, teeth triumphant. Curls damp, met with genuine applause. One by one, others follow, each attempt greeted with warm cheers that feel larger within the close room. A young man joins, dunking decisively, failing once, then rising with a crisp green apple, greeted by laughter and delight. Towels circle the room. Biscuits are passed to wash away the taste of water, and the game moves along. Next comes snap apple. A cord is strung from door to mantel, suspending a fork-stabbed apple, and just behind it, a short, lit candle. The trick? Take a bite of the apple without brushing against the flame. The apple jerks, the candle flickers, noses retreat with startled laughter. Each misstep is met with gasps and cheers, until, at last, one guest secures a proper bite, and is celebrated with a brief swell of victory. The scent of apple flesh mingles with faint wax smoke in the air. The hostess then scatters a handful of nuts onto a brass shovel held above the fire. They hop and spin under the heat, popping like tiny creatures, their oily perfume rising. It is not yet time for fortunes, that comes later, in quieter moments. But even this small spectacle holds the room's attention. Eyes fix on the shovel, chatter fades, and the steady pop punctuates the ticking clock. When browned, the nuts are poured into a bowl, salted, and passed around, the warmth shared as the night unfolds. Fingertips glisten. Napkins stir. A sleeve discreetly blots dampness from a wrist. The piano resumes with a gentle tune, no flourishes, just a melody soft enough to invite humming. Soon voices thread the air, quiet, almost like a chorus stitched between lamp glow and firelight, while the household cat blinks lazily and curls deeper into the rug. A gentleman, modest in skill but eager in spirit, produces a coin from his cuff and a paper flower from behind a child's ear, drawing small gasps of delight. Nothing sinister. The mood favors wonder, gentle, reassuring, as if even the walls prefer marvels over fright. And yet, it is Halloween. In a pause, the host crosses to the mantel and lowers the turnip lantern. Up close, its crude face is plain, eyes notched with a pocket knife, teeth uneven and wax having thinned the walls until they glow. He says nothing, only places it by the cider pitcher, a quiet reminder of the mischief outside. Charms and tricks may yet visit this parlor, but for now the games lean toward the softer end of fortune. A blindfold fashioned from a spool of thread, a ring hidden beneath a napkin on a saucer, a scatter of keys set silently on a plate, subtle preparations for what is to come. The parlor shifts into a quieter theater, its light folding inward, its company prepared. The laughter of earlier games ebbs. A hush settles, the kind that falls when every guest agrees, without a word, to listen for something delicate. Hands fold, glasses rest gently on saucers. The last steam curls upward from cups, fading into the ceiling. A coal glows brighter under the poker's nudge, sending thin ribbons of light across the fender. It is time. The hour for quieter fortunes, the ones that pretend to peer forward but mostly reflect what hearts already long to hear. The host sets a single tallow candle in the center of the table, shielding its flame until it steadies. Beside it, he places a small oval mirror, the kind kept in a dressing table drawer. Its silver surface reflects the room in miniature. Lamps dim, curtains drawn, faces hushed and expectant. The hostess lays a plate, a knife, and a handful of apples. Their skins mottled in autumn colors. Anticipation rustles softly. Even skeptics lean closer, eager to watch. The first test is the peel. A shy girl in dove grey steps forward, the same cousin who earlier triumphed at the apple basin. Her gloves now removed, she warms her bare hands over the candle flame, as if gathering courage. Steady, the hostess counsels. All the way round, without breaking. The knife whispers against the apple's skin, peeling it in a ribbon thin as thread. Around and around, the skin coils, slipping past her wrist, dangling like a crimson serpent. At last, she lifts it, turns, and tosses it over her left shoulder. It falls with a soft slap, twisting into a crooked shape. 3 young watchers scramble, each seeing a different letter. That's an S, one insists. No, a G, says another. The host tilts his head, smiles, and declares it a brave G. Laughter ripples, and somewhere in the room, a young man with that initial finds himself the subject of amused glances. Another girl peels a neat ribbon that lands in a figure 8, debated into a B. Another's forms a perfect C, tidy as penmanship. There are groans, blushes, and one shy glance toward the piano bench. When at last one unlucky peel breaks halfway and drops in 2 sad lumps, the room applauds anyway. 2 suitors, someone teases, and cheer prevails. Next comes the nut test. The host places 2 hazelnuts on the hearthstone. Name them, he says. A girl whispers Ellen for one, Thomas for the other, then steps back as though awaiting judgment. The poker warms them, they twitch, then jump. Ellen somersaults neatly, while Thomas shivers, cracks, and pops apart. Laughter follows, half relief, half mock despair. The heart, the host declares solemnly, is a contrary organ. A new pair is urged to try again. Even while laughter rings, eyes drift downward, each guest silently matching names to glances exchanged earlier in the night. The hostess keeps the rhythm of the evening steady, lifting laughter, then quiet, then another small curiosity. She presents a dense loaf, studded with currants. Charms are hidden inside, she says with a sly smile. A ring, a button, a bean, a tiny wishbone wrapped in paper. Slices for fate, she cuts and serves. The first piece reveals nothing, to a child's relief. The next uncovers a button. Industry, declares the host, and the girl who finds it vows to finish her embroidery before the snow. A gentleman discovers the bean, and holds it aloft. King, someone cries, and for the next hour he rules over toasts and games. The ring remains hidden, its absence building anticipation. All the while, the mirror waits on the table, angled just so, reflecting the candle in a narrow corridor of light. No one mentions it, but its silence draws attention. When the cake plates are cleared, the hostess gestures at last. Some of you have heard the tale, she begins, that the face you were destined to know may be seen in glass, if you are brave enough and quiet enough, and alone. A thrill runs through the company. Cousins are chosen as marshals, leading volunteers into the back hall, where a tall mirror hangs beside winter coats. The corridor is cool, the old wood breathing faintly. Each volunteer takes the candle, shields it, and faces the glass. Most return shrugging. Only myself. One returns pale, whispering, "I saw a second light." Another admits to angling his candle just so to trick himself. Even so, the thrill lingers, and each who tries walks back brighter, as if touched by a mystery. When the mirror's magic wanes, the hostess produces a bowl half filled with water. She pricks an egg and lets its white drift like silk into the bowl. Slowly, under the parlor's warmth, the filaments feather outward into curious shapes. A ship, someone says quickly. A journey, another sees a steeple. Marriage, a gentleman swears he spots a plough, earning the playful prophecy that he will toil harder than anyone by next harvest. Even the skeptical aunt concedes that one tendril looks suspiciously like a top hat. The bowl offers no answers, only possibilities, while the company provides the stories. A final charm is offered, light-hearted for those uneasy with mirrors. 3 bowls are set, one filled with clear water, one darkened with ink for the sea, and one left empty. Blindfolded guests dip their fingers into fate. Clear water promises a marriage close to home. Ink means a match from afar. The empty bowl, a season more of solitude. A practical girl finds the empty one and cheers, delighted to claim her aunt's spare room for winter. Another dips into ink, laughing at her stained fingertip. I shall marry a sailor or a newspaperman, she jokes, and either may drown me. The aunt retorts that she'll wed a baker instead and live forever on warm loaves. At last, the bowls are cleared. The room breathes as one. No true futures have been revealed, only hopes granted space, teasing words given permission to linger, and unspoken feelings safely disguised as play. The candles burn lower, the coals glow deep and steady. Somewhere a pipe ticks as it cools. The hostess, who has steered the evening with grace, allows the silence to rest, then gives the smallest nod to the pianist. He folds his hands, waiting. Music will come later. Now is the time for stories, the kind that invite spirits politely into parlors, through the doorway of words. Chairs draw closer to the hearth. The aunt sits straighter, willing herself to be impressed. The Bean King surrenders his crown with a flourish and settles back, proud of his brief reign. The host asks gently, "Shall we hear something suited to the night?" No one replies aloud, but their bodies answer. Spines straighten, faces turn toward the hearth, hands fold, not in prayer but in patient expectation. The charms have done their work. They have softened the edges of the night, opened doors within quiet hearts, and made space for a tale to enter. But beyond the curtains, the world of Halloween is very different. Step outside again, into the chill October air, and the streets are restless. Boys, and the occasional bold girl who slipped free from her mother's eye, roam in small gangs. They carry ropes, soap, turnip lanterns, and endless invention. Their carved faces grin like will-o'-the-wisps, jagged and alive. Their laughter bursts in sudden shouts. Boots pound the cobblestones as they dash from prank to prank. The tricks of the night are well known. Gates are lifted and dragged down roads, left leaning against barns or piled in odd places. Wagon wheels vanish, reappearing on the town's edge. Outhouses are tipped. Windows are smeared with soap. In some places, fences are dismantled board by board, the mischief as much endurance as play. Chickens are freed from their coops, clucking indignantly across yards. Not all pranks are harmless. Stones shatter panes, paint is smeared on doors, livestock is startled into running. Newspapers publish stern warnings, scolding rowdy youth for going too far. Some thunder that Halloween is no excuse for lawlessness. Others concede that a little license may be forgiven, so long as no lasting harm is done. But the line is thin and easily crossed. Imagine turning a corner and stumbling upon such a group. They scatter at first, only to circle back with jeers. A boy brandishes a stolen gatepost like a pike. Another blares a tin horn, the sound echoing down narrow streets. They are not villains, only testing limits, daring the night. Halloween gives permission to break the rules, and they seize it eagerly. Yet danger lies in escalation. One prank invites another, each bigger than the last. Wagons overturned, doors battered. In rural towns, animals painted garishly, wells capped with stones, too heavy to lift. In Illinois, a cow was coaxed up the stairs of a schoolhouse and left there, refusing to descend until morning. Mischief on such a scale required strength, planning, and pride, and though adults grumbled, many retold the stories with a smile once the damage was repaired. Communities tolerated it as part of the season. Gates were rehung, wagons righted, fences mended. The memory of the mischief embroidered in retelling became part of local law. Walk deeper through the town, and you'll hear more tricks unfolding. A knocker rattles furiously, though no one stands at the door. Flour dusts a porch, footprints appearing like the marks of ghosts. Wire stretched across a walkway sends a pedestrian stumbling, laughter bursting from the shadows. Each prank grows bolder as the night stretches on. Yet, even in chaos, tradition lingers. In Irish and Scottish neighborhoods, these disguises and pranks echo ancient customs, masks to confuse wandering spirits, noise to drive them off. The children may not know the lineage, but they live it nonetheless, stepping outside themselves for a single night. Of course, not all pranks remain playful. In larger cities, gangs grow rowdy, emboldened by anonymity. Windows break, fires spark, streetcars are overturned. Police patrols increase, newspapers warn sternly. The debate spreads. Is Halloween a cherished tradition or a dangerous license? Still, for every act of destruction there are countless mischiefs remembered with laughter. Barrels rolled noisily through streets, benches dragged into churchyards, carts hoisted onto rooftops. Annoyances, yes, but also part of the season. The morning brings repairs, while the night leaves behind stories retold again and again, part of Halloween's restless heritage. Indoors, the parlor glows with warmth, games, and quiet prophecy. Outdoors, the holiday spills into wild laughter, boots clattering on stone, tricks multiplying in the dark. Both belong to Halloween in 1890, two halves of the same October night. One world turns inward, the other outward, yet both draw their energy from the unsettled spirit of the season. Inside the parlor, after the laughter of fortune games and the chaos of the streets outside, the atmosphere has shifted into something altogether different. The lamps burn lower now, trimmed so their flames glow like tiny suns caged in cloudy glass. Shadows stretch across the wallpaper, curling over floral patterns, until the painted blossoms seem to twist into strange new shapes. The coal bed in the grate has melted into a steady glow of red, pulsing like the slow heartbeat of the house. The mantel clock ticks steadily, its rhythm patient and unyielding, each chime carrying the weight of time pressing forward. The sound feels louder now, as though the silence of the room has given it more space to breathe. Around the parlor, guests shift gently in their chairs, smoothing skirts, adjusting waistcoats, exchanging glances without words. Fans are snapped closed with soft clicks. Cups are drained, their rims set carefully onto saucers with the faintest clink of porcelain. Plates are nudged aside, crumbs left scattered like small traces of the feast. The conversation that once bubbled easily has dwindled to whispers, and now even those fade into stillness. It is not an uncomfortable silence, but a chosen one, a silence the company seems to invite, waiting for what the night will bring next. The hostess, who has guided the evening with the touch of a conductor coaxing notes from an orchestra, lets the quiet deepen. She knows well that in stillness lies power. When laughter has subsided and games have been put away, even the smallest word will strike with the resonance of a piano chord. At last she speaks, her voice low but carrying. "What is Halloween?" she asks softly, without a story or two. The room exhales as if in answer. A sigh moves through the company, part relief, part anticipation. This is what they have been waiting for. The true heart of the night, not just the laughter of apple bobbing, not only the teasing fortunes of nuts and peels, but the stories, the ones that creep into corners, that settle in the bones, that make the night feel unlike any other. The host rises from his chair and steps toward the bookcase. His hand falls upon a familiar volume, its leather binding softened by years of use. He draws it out and turns it so the spine catches the low firelight. The Sketchbook of Jeffrey Crayon by Washington Irving. It is a book that has traveled through countless parlors like this one, carried in satchels, borrowed from libraries, whispered about in magazines. He opens to a passage without needing to search, the tale that has haunted autumn nights for nearly 70 years. The guests smile knowingly. He does not need to read the entire legend of Sleepy Hollow. Most gathered here already know of Ichabod Crane, the lanky schoolteacher, and of the headless horseman, the phantom said to carry his own pumpkin head beneath his arm. Instead, the host recounts in his own words the famous chase, the thunder of hooves across the wooden bridge, the dark rider rising against the night, the terrible moment of triumph when the phantom prevails. His voice carries not surprise but authority, a reminder that tradition itself holds power. The tale may be familiar, but its spell does not weaken. The company leans forward, eager to step once more into the dark woods of the Hudson Valley, to hear the hoofbeats in imagination, to shiver though they know what comes next. When the story ends, silence lingers for a breath, then another, before giving way to a ripple of satisfaction. It is the silence that follows a ritual well kept. A cousin, younger and restless, seizes the moment. He is fond of magazines, especially those filled with serialized tales of strange occurrences and marvels. He recalls aloud a story clipped from Harper's Weekly of a phantom ship sighted off the misty coast of Maine. Its sails hung in tatters, yet they caught no wind. Its crew stood like statues, faces pale and still. Fishermen swore the sight of it was an omen, foretelling storms. And indeed, so the tale insisted, a gale struck the following week. The cousin tells it with relish, his voice lingering on the ship's eerie silence, its passage across the water leaving no wake. He stretches the pause at the moment of its vanishing into fog, allowing the room to imagine the empty sea. A shiver runs through the company, half from the story, half from the way he tells it. No one admits to fear, but the small adjustments in posture, the crossed arms, the quick touches at collars, reveal that the story has worked its charm. The aunt, skeptical yet unwilling to be left out, contributes her own recollection. In her youth, she says, there was talk of a light moving across a desolate moor near her childhood home. Neighbors whispered that it was carried by a traveler drowned in a bog, condemned to wander forever in search of a path. She admits she never saw it herself, though her voice falters just slightly as she speaks. The hesitation is enough to stir questions. Was she protecting her pride, or had the tale unsettled her more deeply than she wished to reveal? The hostess, sensing the mood ripening, dims another lamp with a practiced hand. The flame sinks lower, the room tightens, only the glowing coals, the faint circle of candlelight on the table, and the half-lit faces of the guests remain. Outside, the last whoops and cries of boys fade away into the distance. The house has become its own universe, sealed and separate, a world contained within lamplight and shadow. The stories now shift into darker territory. A gentleman recounts the tale of a woman who on every All Hallows Eve heard her name whispered by an unseen voice. Once she ignored it, and soon after her fiancé drowned at sea. Another tells of a farmhouse abandoned long ago, where the ghost of a farmer's widow is said to appear each October, lantern in hand, wandering near the well where she once wept. A girl with a mischievous gleam insists she herself once heard a midnight knock upon her window, though the sill stood too high for any visitor. Frost, she swears, bloomed across the glass in the shape of a hand, 5 fingers spread wide. The company listens, suspended between belief and skepticism, each person allowing themselves to be carried just far enough to feel the thrill, yet not so far that reason entirely loosens its grip. This is the balance ghost stories always strike. Fear brushed lightly but painted deeply enough to stir the imagination. The clock on the mantel ticks louder now, or perhaps it only seems louder because every ear is tuned to the smallest sound. The scrape of a chair leg startles more than it should. Even the faint sigh of the coals shifting in the grate seems like a whisper from beyond. The house itself feels alive, leaning closer, listening. For Victorians in 1890, ghost stories are not merely diversions. They are part of a broader fascination that stretches across parlors and newspapers, sermons and scientific debates, spiritualism, seances, table rapping, communication with the beyond. All these have become fashionable amusements, and, for some, earnest belief. Families gather in parlors like this one, to wait for knocks, to hear faint voices, to watch letters scrawl across paper under unseen hands. Newspapers print accounts with seriousness, skeptics mock them with scorn. Yet still the tables are filled, the candles lit, the questions whispered. The host, catching the appetite of his guests, chooses to indulge. With deliberate care, he draws the curtains fully closed, sealing out the night. The lamps are lowered again until only the fire and a single candle remain. A round table is cleared, chairs drawn near. The air itself seems to grow denser, expectation pressing upon every chest. Only for curiosity, he says with a smile that tries for lightness. Let us see what the night may grant us. Hands are laid lightly on the table, fingertips grazing the cool wood. The surface is smooth beneath the touch, the grain running like veins beneath the candlelight. At first nothing, only silence, thick and unbroken. The child has been carried upstairs to bed, but the cat lingers, tail twitching, eyes wide and bright in the shadows. Then a faint creak, the table shifts almost imperceptibly. A gasp escapes one guest, another creak, and then 3 knocks. 1, 2, 3, sharp, deliberate, undeniable. Laughter bursts forth, nervous and hushed, a release of tension too sudden to contain. Ask, the host suggests. A cousin leans forward, her voice thin. Who visits us tonight? The silence stretches long enough to press against nerves. Then another knock. Was it the wood contracting in the fire's heat, or something? Another question follows. Are you friend or foe? A pause, just long enough to prickle the skin. Then 2 quick knocks. Friend. The room exhales, relieved but faintly disappointed. The aunt narrows her eyes, her voice sharp. It is mischief. Someone pressing where they ought not. Yet even she does not remove her hand from the table. The séance lasts only a short while. 10 minutes, perhaps 15. Enough to rouse nerves, but not long enough to test patience. The host, ever watchful of mood, lifts his hands at last. That will do. Relief sweeps through the parlor like a fresh wind. Shoulders sink, voices rise, the spell loosens. Biscuits are passed, cups are refilled. Someone hums a fragment of a song, pulling the company back toward comfort. The lamps brighten, washing the shadows away. The parlor breathes again, returning to warmth. But the evening is not yet finished. The No Halloween in 1890 is complete without its table of food, its offerings both humble and full of meaning. The company drifts toward the sideboard where candles gleam upon the spread. In their glow, the feast appears painterly, as though arranged for a still life. Apples polished to brilliance, bowls of nuts in their shells, stacks of ginger biscuits, a dense loaf heavy with fruit. There is nothing gaudy here, no factory confections in colored papers, no parade of sugar wrapped in foil. Instead, the table speaks of orchards, of autumn fields, of kitchens warmed by hearth fires. Apples stand at the heart of it all. Russets with their golden roughness, Baldwins, striped red and green. Pippins, tart and bright. They sit in bowls like treasures, simple yet prized. For in 1890, the apple is more than fruit. It is a symbol, it is fortune's fruit, used in games of bobbing, of peeling, of tossing skins to divine initials. It is sustenance baked into pies, stewed into sauces, dried and strung into rings to hang above stoves. To bite into an apple is to taste not only sweetness, but memory. The orchards where ladders leaned against trees, the barrels rolled into cellars, the baskets carried down rows heavy with harvest. Each apple carries the summer sun into autumn, its juice sharper in the chill air, its crunch echoing with the season's final abundance. Beside them, nuts fill bowls, their shells dull and ridged. Walnuts, hazelnuts. Guests crack them with small hammers, or toss them into the fire to watch their fate. Flames that burn steady promise devotion. Nuts that hop or pop foretell discord. The laughter that follows each verdict is playful, yet beneath it lies genuine curiosity. For in an age where marriage shapes lives and futures, even playful omens hold a weight of possibility. The shells scatter across the table, brown fragments catching the glow as though tiny fortunes had been split open and spilled into the lamplight. The loaf waits next. In Irish and Scottish homes, barmbrack is the centerpiece, a yeasted fruit bread rich with raisins and spice, baked with charms hidden inside, coins for wealth, rings for marriage, thimbles for solitude, buttons for toil. In America, the tradition lingers in gentler form. This loaf contains a bean, a ring wrapped in paper, a key. Each slice is cut carefully, each bite taken with quiet hope. To discover a token is to carry its prophecy into the year ahead. The dense crumb, dark with nutmeg and clove, crackles faintly as the knife presses through. Raisins burst with sweetness against the tongue. Guests compare slices, tease those who find nothing, and cheer for those who uncover treasure. Playful, yes, but humming with an older energy. The sense that fate itself can be folded into dough and revealed by chance. On a smaller plate, molasses cookies gleam, their dark surfaces sprinkled with sugar. Their flavor is deep, earthy, spiced with ginger and clove. In some homes, these are given to children who dare knock on doors, though the custom is not yet common. Trick-or-treating lies decades in the future, but here its roots can be seen. Humble rounds of spice shared with the bold. Molasses, cheaper than refined sugar, ties these cookies to working-class kitchens, to mill towns and farmsteads alike. They are sturdy, satisfying, lasting longer than delicate cakes. Their aroma fills the parlor now, mingling with cider steam and the fading smoke of the hearth, perfuming the air with the very scent of October. Outside, the town is softening into stillness. Wagons overturned in play remain abandoned. Gates lean crooked by fences. A wheel rests against a barn door. The gangs of boys who roamed earlier have returned home, to scolding mothers or indulgent siblings eager for stories. The air has grown colder, edged with frost that glints faintly beneath the moon. Lanterns sputter on porches, their carved faces sagging as wax gutters low. The season's mischief has burned itself out, leaving only quiet. Inside, the parlor holds its hush. Guests begin to rise. Cloaks are drawn, gloves slipped on, farewells whispered softly. The hostess offers one last biscuit, one last sip of cider. Though the tray is nearly bare, candles burn to stubs, their wax pooled and hardened. The fire exhales its last sigh, coals collapsed into ash. The piano lid is lowered gently, songs pressed back into silence. The cat curls into sleep, its ears flicking as if still catching echoes. Upstairs, the child stirs faintly in dreams, perhaps reliving the shimmer of candlelight on a mirror, or the laughter of the games. In the hall, coats swing from pegs, lifted one by one, doors open. Guests step out into the frosted dark, each carrying a taper or lantern to light their way home. When the last is gone, the house exhales deeply, as though it too had been holding breath. Lamps are extinguished one by one. Rooms shrink back into shadow. The mirror is covered, its surface no longer needed for glimpses into the unknown. Dishes are stacked, crumbs brushed aside, plates cleared. A faint scent of nutmeg, apples and tallow lingers, seeping into curtains, into wallpaper, into the air itself. By morning, it will be gone, replaced by the ordinary smells of soap and smoke. A bell tolls outside. Midnight has passed. All Hallows has given way to All Saints, and tomorrow it will slip into All Souls. The veil that felt so thin tonight begins to close once more. What was glimpsed, in stories, in charms, in imagination, recedes back into memory. Frost traces silver over fences. Leaves scrape across cobblestones. The town sleeps, its mischief spent. Halloween of 1890 has ended, and yet its spirit lingers. The laughter of games, the chill of ghost stories, the warmth of food, the wildness of the street. All these will remain, remembered, retold, reshaped into stories. Years from now, someone will recall the peal that landed like an S, the candle that trembled at the seance, the wagon overturned outside. Details will grow into legend, legend into folklore, folklore into history. This is the essence of Halloween. A night woven from fleeting hours into ritual, from ritual into heritage. A single evening in 1890, lived in parlor and street alike, now part of the larger story of how people greet the turning of the year, how they meet fear and mischief with light and laughter. Now the lanterns are dark, the parlor still, the streets hushed under frost. Halloween has closed its eyes, and so, dear listener, close yours as well. The tale has ended, the fire is cold, the candle's gone, the night belongs now to dreams. The parlor rests in a hush, but it is not the hush of emptiness. It is the hush of fullness, of a night that has unfolded like a long, intricate tapestry. Every thread of it has been woven. The games of laughter, the fortunes whispered, the stories shared, the brief brush with spirits, the feast of apples and spice. And yet, even as the guests rise and prepare to leave, there lingers in the air a sense that the night is not truly over. Halloween resists ending, even when lamps are dimmed and coals sink into ash. The company lingers in doorways. Cloaks are clasped at throats, hats pulled low, gloves are tugged into place with little snaps. A few final words are exchanged, not with the animation of earlier conversation but with the softness of reluctant parting. The hostess presses one last biscuit into a gloved hand. pours the final inch of cider into a cup that is sipped gratefully. Her smile is gentle, but her eyes are heavy. She knows the ritual of farewell, as well as she knows the rituals of fortune. The parlor itself seems to sag in sympathy. Candles droop low, their wax curled around brass holders in hardened pools. Shadows climb higher along the walls, swallowing patterns of roses and vines. The piano waits closed, its keys silenced, the ghost of music still clinging in the air. The cat shifts and resettles, curling tighter, its breathing shallow and steady. Outside, the street is still, but not silent. The air carries the faint creak of wood, the sigh of wind slipping through shutters, the distant bark of a dog. Somewhere, far down the lane, a final group of boys laugh sharply before vanishing into the night. Their footsteps scatter, fading until the sound is lost. What was chaos an hour ago has become memory. The hostess lingers after the last guest departs. She walks the parlor slowly, as though surveying the remnants of the evening. The sideboard is nearly bare. Only a half apple, a scattering of crumbs, a cracked walnut shell. She brushes the tablecloth lightly, gathers plates into a stack, straightens the chairs. Each action is small, ordinary, yet carries a quiet reverence. For nights like these do not come often, and once they pass, they live only in memory. She takes the poker and stirs the coals once more, though they have little to give. The grate sighs faintly, a final breath before surrendering to cold. She does not add another log. Instead, she watches as the glow dwindles, the red collapsing into black. The lamps are extinguished one by one. Each flame flickers, bends, and disappears, leaving behind the thin thread of smoke that curls upward and vanishes. With every snuffed light, the room shrinks. From a place of brightness and voices, it contracts into a chamber of shadow. At last, only a single taper remains, its glow catching the edges of furniture, throwing tall, soft silhouettes against the walls. She carries it with her as she leaves, and soon even that light is gone. The parlor rests in darkness. The wallpaper, the rug, the piano, the chairs, all recede into stillness. The faint scent of nutmeg, apples, and tallow lingers, but even that will fade by morning, replaced by the smell of soap and smoke. Outside, the bells mark the hour past midnight. A church tower tolls, slow and low, its iron voice carrying over rooftops and cobblestones. It tolls not for mischief now, but for reverence. The season of saints has begun. All Hallows has passed into All Saints, and by tomorrow All Souls will follow. The veil that felt so thin only hours ago begins to draw closed, quiet and unseen. What was glimpsed tonight, whether in a mirror, a peal, a whisper, or imagination itself, withdraws back into memory. The town lies under frost. Fences glint silver where ice has traced its delicate lines. Leaves, brittle and pale, skitter across the stones with the faintest scrape, carried by the gentlest of winds. Roofs shine faintly in moonlight, edged with white. Windows glow dimly here and there, lanterns left burning against the chill. The streets, once alive with gangs of boys hauling gates and rattling knockers, are empty now. A wagon still lies overturned. A wheel leans against a churchyard wall. A gate rests awkwardly against a fence. These are the scars of the night, remnants of mischief that will be repaired in daylight with weary amusement. Fathers will shake their heads with half-hidden smiles. Mothers will scold in ritual tones. Children will boast of daring, voices swelling with pride as they retell adventures. And so the cycle will continue, each year renewing itself with the same pranks, the same laughter, the same sighs of indulgent complaint. But for now, all is quiet. The mischief has been spent. Within the parlor, the hush is deeper still. Upstairs, the child stirs in a dream, perhaps reliving the shimmer of a peel tossed over a shoulder, or the sight of shapes curling from egg white in warm water, or the flicker of a mirror's reflection in candlelight. These are the seeds of memory that grow into stories, stories that grow into tradition. The cat sleeps undisturbed, its tail flicking only once, as if in response to some sound too faint for human ears. In the hall, the coats no longer sway from pegs. The boots have been carried away. The front door is bolted. The house breathes in its own rhythm, wood creaking softly as it contracts against the night air. Pipes tick as they cool. The very bones of the home settle into silence. And so the evening ends. Halloween of 1890 closes not with a shout, not with a final prank, but with stillness. Yet its spirit lingers. For those who lived it, tonight will not vanish when morning comes. It will live in recollections, in talk around tables, in the quiet moments when someone remembers a game, a sound, a taste. Years later, someone will recall the peal that curled like an S, the tremor of the candle at the séance, the laughter that broke after nervous knocks, the wagon found sideways in the street. The stories will shift, embroidered in retelling, details added, moments exaggerated. They will be told again and again, until they no longer belong only to the people who were there, but to everyone who hears them. This is how memory becomes folklore, how folklore becomes history. Halloween itself lives by such transformations. What began centuries earlier as bonfires in fields, as prayers for the dead, as charms for protection, has traveled through time, shedding and gaining, until it reached this night in 1890, a night both solemn and playful, reverent and mischievous, half old, half new. The parlor with its games, the street with its tricks, together they form the whole, one inward, one outward, both reflections of the same season. Now the lanterns are dark, the parlor is still, the streets lie hushed beneath frost. Halloween has closed its eyes. And so, dear listener, close yours too. Let the night recede, let the silence stretch, let dreams take their place, for the story has ended. The fire is gone, the candles are cold, and tomorrow will bring another season, another day. But for now, the night belongs to rest. The night lingers, not because the clock hesitates, but because memory does. Hours may pass, yet within the mind of anyone who walked those streets or sat in that parlor, Halloween of 1890 stretches long after midnight, for the Victorian spirit thrives on reflection, on turning moments into impressions, impressions into recollections, and recollections into stories that outlast the ticking of the clock. Think of the parlor now, emptied of guests. Chairs stand slightly askew, as though still holding the shapes of bodies that leaned forward, that sat back, that shivered with laughter or wonder. The table bears the faint marks of the evening, a crumb pressed into the cloth, a splash of cider dried sticky near the rim, the faint scent of apples that will cling long after the fruit itself is gone. Shadows have crept fully into the corners, yet the impression of warmth lingers, a memory of fire even when the hearth is cold. The hostess, moving softly through the rooms, cannot help but pause here and there. She touches the back of a chair, straightens a folded napkin, lingers a moment by the covered mirror. She is not only tidying, she is preserving, committing the evening to her own memory. She knows the rituals of fortune and play are not merely games. They are threads binding the company together, allowing the night to sink deeper than merriment alone. Upstairs, the child sleeps. Dreams shift through her mind like pages turning in a book. In one dream, she reaches for an apple peel that dances in the air like a ribbon. In another, she peers into a mirror and sees shapes she cannot name. The dreams blur, mixing fear with delight, unease with wonder. She will not remember them fully, but their impressions will stay. Years later, when she hears tales of Halloween, something in her will stir, a faint echo of tonight, the sound of laughter, the flicker of lamplight, the scent of molasses cookies cooling on a plate. Outside, the frost thickens, the air sharpens, turning breath into pale clouds that drift and vanish. The town lies beneath a cloak of silence, though silence is never empty. Listen closely, and you will hear the faint groan of wood as houses contract against the cold, the occasional shuffle of a horse in its stable, the long, slow creak of a weather vane turning in the breeze. The sounds are small, but in the stillness of night, they seem magnified, as though the world itself is whispering. Down the lane, a gate leans awkwardly, pulled from its post by the hands of laughing boys only hours ago. Tomorrow it will be lifted, repaired, the incident told with exasperated amusement, but tonight it stands as a silent reminder of the freedom Halloween grants, the one night of the year when rules loosen, when children challenge the order of things, when disorder is tolerated because it too is tradition. This tolerance, this strange permission for mischief, is no accident of culture. It has deep roots, stretching back centuries. In older times the night was seen as liminal, a threshold between the harvest and the long winter, between the living and the dead. Disorder on such a night carried its own purpose. By unsettling the ordinary, by letting chaos have its moment, the community reaffirmed its boundaries when morning came. What was broken would be fixed. What was scattered would be gathered. What was laughed at would be retold as warning, as story, as custom. Halloween, in its Victorian form, still carries this ancient pulse, though it beats now beneath layers of parlor games and magazine tales. The people of 1890, whether they knew it or not, were living at the cusp of change. The industrial world was reshaping life. Cities glowed with electric lamps. Railways pulled villages into wider networks. Newspapers carried stories farther and faster than ever before. Yet here on this October night, the old rituals endured. Apples still carried prophecy. Nuts still whispered of love. Children still masked themselves as spirits, even if only with paper and cloth. The past and future touched, just for a night, and the result was a season unlike any other. Within the parlor, the symbolism of food carried as much weight as the flavor itself. Apples were not merely eaten, they were vessels of fate. Their skins became letters, their shapes became omens, their presence a reminder of orchards heavy with fruit, of abundance drawn in before the winter's scarcity. Nuts were not just cracked or roasted, they were asked questions, their responses measured in the hop of a shell, the crack of heat. Even bread was transformed into prophecy, charms hidden within to turn a simple slice into revelation. This layering of meaning upon the ordinary is what gave Halloween its depth for Victorians. Symbolism was a language, a flower in a vase, a charm in a cake, a color chosen for a gown. All carried resonance beyond the surface. Halloween, therefore, was not an exception, but a culmination. A night when symbols were brought into play deliberately, openly, with laughter that masked seriousness. Even the ghost stories were layered with meaning. The tale of the phantom ship was not only a thrill, it was a reminder of nature's unpredictability, of storms that could claim lives without warning. The story of the widow's lantern was not only eerie, it was a meditation on grief, on love that lingers beyond death. The whispered knock upon a window was not only fear, it was fascination with the unseen, the curiosity about what lies just beyond the edge of vision. This is why ghost stories held such power for Victorians. They were not only diversions for long nights, but mirrors for anxieties, containers for questions that could not easily be asked in daylight. Was there life after death? Could the dead return? Were the boundaries of the world as firm as they seemed? The popularity of seances, of mediums, of spiritualist gatherings, all testified to this yearning for contact, for confirmation, for wonder. And yet, even as belief mingled with doubt, the ritual itself mattered most. To sit in silence, to hear the creak of a table, to feel the weight of possibility in a room. This was enough. Whether the knocks were tricks or truths did not matter as much as the shared experience, the collective leaning forward, the breath held in common suspense. That is the gift of such evenings. Not certainty, but the shared suspension of disbelief. Now, as the house settles into sleep, one might imagine the streets themselves dreaming. The cobblestones, damp with frost, seem to hold echoes of footsteps. The lampposts, their flames extinguished, recall the sputter of gas, the halo of light, the moth that brushed against glass before falling still. The hedges whisper faintly, leaves rattling against one another, as though repeating the laughter of boys who darted past. Even the overturned wagon, absurd in its new position, seems to wait patiently for morning, its story already growing in the telling. The town rests, but its memory is alive, and memory, for Victorians, was treasure. Diaries would be filled, letters written, small details preserved. A cousin might write to a friend in another town of the fortunes told and the games played. A gentleman might recount in a letter to his sister the thrill of the séance, half mocking, half sincere. The aunt might retell the tale of the moor's ghostly light to a neighbor, insisting again that she never saw it, yet telling it with the same trembling pause. And so the night would live on, carried outward in words, in recollections, in fragments of story. By morning, the frost would glitter in the sunlight, the town's mischief repaired, the parlor aired and cleaned, but the memory of Halloween would linger, settling not only in those who lived it, but in those who heard of it after. This is how tradition survives, not by repetition alone, but by retelling, by layering each generation's experience upon the last. Halloween of 1890 was not unique, and yet it was. Every Halloween carries the same elements, the games, the mischief, the stories, but each night has its own particular texture, its own small details that lodge in memory. Tonight, it was the peel shaped like an S, the candle trembling at the seance, the bean that crowned a king for an hour, the wagon left crooked by a fence. Tomorrow, another year, it will be something else, and so the chain continues. Now, the lanterns are extinguished. The parlor is dark. The streets are hushed beneath frost. Halloween has drifted into memory. And so, dear listener, let your eyes close as well. The tale is told. The fire has gone out. The night belongs now to dreams, where memory and imagination mingle, where the peel falls again. The ship sails silently through mist. The laughter of boys echoes down cobblestones. Rest, for Halloween has ended. But its story lives on. The story of Halloween in 1890 is not bound to a single evening, nor does it vanish when the last candle gutters out, or when frost settles quietly on the cobblestones. Nights like these are not confined to the clock. They breathe beyond their hours, expanding and lingering in memory. And memory, unlike fire or candle, does not easily fade. Memory grows, it stretches across days, then years, reshaping itself with every retelling. A story told once is small. A story told again becomes layered. Each retelling sharpens certain details, softens others, until what was lived becomes something larger, more lasting, something that belongs not just to those who were there, but to all who hear it. Picture again the parlor, but this time not as it was when voices filled it. Picture it after the voices have gone, after the laughter has folded back into silence. The parlor stands in darkness, its once vivid wallpaper concealed by shadow, yet the patterns remain, unseen but present. Roses, vines, curling leaves painted in deep wine hues. The piano rests untouched, its wood cooling, the last of the night's warmth, leaving its polished frame. Its strings hum faintly in the quiet, a low murmur caused not by touch but by the shrinking of metal in the chill. The chairs, now empty, sit in stillness. But each one carries a ghost of its own, not spectral figures, but the impressions of the bodies that sat there. Here lingered the cousin who leaned forward eagerly at each fortune. There the aunt who sat with arms folded in skepticism, though even she leaned closer during the ghost stories. Another chair remembers the restless shifting of a boy, his knees bouncing, impatient for the next amusement. Each chair has its memory, pressed invisibly into fabric and wood. The sideboard is stripped now of its offerings, but in memory it still overflows. Apples, once polished until their skins gleamed under candlelight, remain in imagination like jewels in bowls. The loaf, dense with fruit, sits once more, awaiting its knife. Charms lie hidden within its crumb, ready to surprise the lucky or unlucky slice. Nuts cracked with laughter scatter again across the surface, their shells breaking open like miniature fortunes, their meat shared by fingers still shiny with oil, though cleared away in truth. In memory the table is abundant, still laden, still glowing under the haze of lamplight. The house itself feels changed. It has returned to itself, yes, returned to its ordinary form, but it is not the same house that it was before the evening began. Nights such as these leave an imprint. They do not alter walls in stone or wood, but they press themselves into atmosphere. The walls now carry the faint echo of ghost stories told in whispers. The curtains, heavy with lace and brocade, have absorbed the scent of cider steam and nutmeg, the tang of apples roasted by flame. The floorboards, worn smooth by years of use, remember the shuffle of boots, the scrape of chairs, the soft tread of children darting across the rug. For days, perhaps weeks, the air of the house will retain this faint trace of Halloween, a perfume of cider, smoke, laughter, and unease. Step outside the house and the town itself slumbers beneath frost. Night has tightened its grip. The fences gleam silver, edged with ice crystals that sparkle faintly in the moonlight. The grass crunches under the hooves of the occasional horse shifting in its stable, the sound sharp, brittle, unmistakable. Roof tiles glint white, a dusting of frozen dew shining faintly like scales. The streets are empty, but not hollow. They are rich with the memory of mischief, carrying echoes of the night's energy. Here, a gate was dragged noisily across stone, its hinges squealing in protest. There, a wagon was tipped on its side and left crooked against a fence. A knocker rattled at a door until the householder flung it open, only to face empty air and laughter vanishing into the dark. These acts of mischief are gone now, but their presence lingers, as if the very stones themselves remember. Memory settles here, woven into mortar and wood, as firmly as nails hold a door frame. Come morning, when frost glitters beneath the rising sun, these scars will be revealed. Fathers will trudge out into the cold with tools slung over shoulders, faces lined with weariness, but not with anger. They will lift gates back onto their posts, right wagons, gather chickens wandering loose in the yard. Their hands will do the work, but their eyes will carry the faintest trace of humor, even pride. Boys will grin sheepishly under their parents' scolding, nodding in apology, but when out of sight, they will grin again, boasting of their daring. Mothers will shake their heads as they sweep porches, muttering that the youth grow bolder with every passing year. Yet even in their complaints lies something like acceptance, as if they too recognize the necessity of mischief, for without disorder, Halloween would not feel whole. Without tricks, the balance of the season would be incomplete. This dual nature, the parlor and the street, the controlled and the chaotic, defines Halloween in the Victorian world. It is not one or the other, but both together, that give the holiday its shape. One side turns inward, reflective, steeped in tradition, in symbolism, in the slow pace of stories told by firelight. The other turns outward, wild, restless, driven by youth, testing the edges of order, driven by the thrill of freedom and daring. Together, they create balance. Together, they echo the deeper truth of the season, that Halloween itself is liminal. It is a holiday that stands not firmly in one place, but on the threshold between two, between autumn and winter, between harvest and scarcity, between warmth and cold, between the living and the dead, between order and disorder. It is this liminality that grants the holiday its peculiar power. The Victorians, more than most, understood the fascination of thresholds. Their era was one of boundaries blurred, between science and superstition, between progress and tradition, between the tangible and the unseen. They filled their parlors with symbols. They layered meaning into objects. They reveled in the spaces where certainty dissolved. Halloween was not only a night of diversion for them, but a night that embodied their worldview. It was a time when the veil could thin, not only between worlds, but between roles, between rules, between the expected and the possible. The food itself spoke this language of thresholds. Apples bridged the world of sustenance and the world of prophecy. A bite was nourishment, but it was also a message, a link to orchards past and to futures still imagined. Nuts bridged the ordinary and the mystical, cracked open for taste, but also watched for signs, whether flames leapt steady or sputtered wild. Bread bridged labor and fate, charms hidden inside transforming simple sustenance into revelation. Even cookies, humble and dark with molasses, bridged classes, their affordable sweetness, linking the kitchens of farms with the kitchens of mills, linking children and adults alike in their sturdy, spiced flavor. Every detail of the night carried double weight. Every action, every taste, every sound meant something more than itself. A knock at the door was not only a prank, it was a reminder that unseen things could approach uninvited. A flame flickering in a turnip lantern was not only light, it was protection against wandering spirits. A peel tossed over the shoulder was not only a game, it was a prophecy whispered into shape by chance. The Victorians lived in a way that loaded the simplest acts with meaning, and Halloween was their canvas for this instinct. It was the night when the ordinary could be made extraordinary. And then there were the stories. They too rested on thresholds. The phantom ship seen in Maine's waters stood between weather and omen, between natural storm and supernatural warning. The widow's lantern, wandering near an abandoned well, stood between grief and haunting, between love remembered and sorrow eternal. The whispered knock upon a high window stood between imagination and fear, between the rational explanation and the possibility of something more. Each story pressed gently on questions that could not easily be spoken in daylight. The fear of death, the longing for connection, the unease of a world that seemed to change too quickly with every new invention. Spiritualism had offered one outlet for such questions, promising communication with the beyond. Parlors across America and Britain, filled with tables that rapped, with mediums who spoke in trances, with letters that claimed to arrive from another world. But Halloween offered another outlet, less structured, less solemn, but no less powerful. Around a fire by the dim glow of a lamp, People could lean into fear safely. They could brush against the unknown without stepping fully into it. A story told in low tones allowed them to feel the chill of death's shadow without facing it directly. It was ritual disguised as entertainment, a way of carrying the weight of uncertainty without letting it crush. This, perhaps, is why Halloween has endured. Not because of the games, though they are charming in their own right. Not because of the mischief, though it is lively and unforgettable. But because Halloween gives voice to what lies beneath the surface of every age. The questions that never vanish. What waits beyond death? What lingers unseen, just out of reach? What role does fate play in our lives? And how do we, fragile and fleeting, find our place in the rhythm of the season? For the Victorians of 1890, these questions were as present as they are now. They dressed them in apples and candles, in nuts and laughter, in pranks and stories. They carried them into the night and let them dissolve into memory, confident that the questions themselves would never be fully answered, but that the ritual of asking them was enough. And so the night ended, as all nights must. But even in ending, it carried promise. The frost that lay upon the ground was not only the mark of October's close, it was the beginning of November, All Saints, All Souls, a season of remembrance, of honouring the dead, of carrying forward what had been left behind. Halloween was the threshold. What followed was the step beyond. Now the lanterns are gone, the parlour rests in stillness. The town lies hushed under frost. Halloween of 1890 has ended, but its story has only begun. For every telling, every memory, every retelling in another parlour, another home, another century keeps it alive. And so, dear listener, as you close your eyes, know that you are part of this chain. You carry the laughter, the fortune games, the ghost stories, the flicker of lamplight, the chill of frost, the sound of wagons tipped in the night. You carry them because they were carried to you, through stories, through history, through tradition, and you too will pass them on. This is Halloween. Not only a night, but a story. Not only a memory, but a heritage. Not only an ending, but a continuation. Close your eyes, let the fire fade, let the lantern darken, rest, for the night belongs now to dreams. Halloween has ended, but its spirit lingers, in memory, in ritual, in history, and it always will. The story of Halloween in 1890, though it seems to end in silence, is never truly over, for memory is a restless companion. It does not stay fixed in one shape, one hour, one room. Instead it grows, drifts, reshapes itself each time it is recalled. The telling of the night is itself a new creation. Words breathe new life into what the eye once saw, and thus the evening, though gone, becomes alive again, stretching its reach far beyond midnight. Imagine the parlour not as it stands now, empty and still, but as a kind of vessel, a vessel that has absorbed all that has passed through it. The wallpaper, unseen in darkness, holds the echoes of conversation, the laughter that rose high during fortune games, the hush that fell heavy during ghost stories, the gasps that punctuated the seance, those roses and vines. Their deep hues hidden now are like pressed flowers between pages, reminders of what bloomed for only a few hours, but will remain imprinted long after. The piano, its lid closed, is silent but not untouched. Its strings hum faintly, not with music, but with memory. Each note played earlier lingers invisibly in the air, as though the vibrations are stored in the very grain of its wood. To sit at it now, even in darkness, would feel different, the instrument having been marked by the evening songs, as though it knows it played a role in shaping the night's rhythm. The chairs stand empty, yet they too are marked. They recall the shifting of weight, the leaning forward in curiosity, the pulling back in fear. They remember the folding of hands in laps, the tapping of fans, the tugging of shawls tighter as the fire burned lower. The chairs themselves seem almost watchful, guardians of the roles they held for a night. The sideboard, bare and cleared, nonetheless seems heavy with its remembered feast. Apples gleam again in memory, their skins bright under lamplight, their crunch recalled in the minds of those who bit them. The bread loaf, though sliced and eaten, still waits in imagination, its hidden charms undiscovered until cut. The nuts, though cracked, still lie in bowls, their shells unbroken, their omens unread. The feast has vanished in truth, but it exists still in recollection, timeless and replenished each time the story is told. The house itself is marked by more than sound and scent. Nights like these alter atmosphere. They saturate the air with a kind of residue, not physical, not visible, but perceptible to anyone who enters. The walls remember. The floors remember. Even the ceilings, their plaster smooth and pale, seem lower now, as though they too leaned closer to hear the tales whispered below. A visitor stepping in tomorrow morning, long after the last guest departs, may pause and sense it. They may say the air feels different, though they cannot name why. For houses hold nights within them, and some nights settle deeper than others. Step outside. The town too holds memory. The streets that only hours ago rang with laughter and chaos now lie quiet, hushed beneath frost. Yet if you walk them, you will feel the echoes. The cobblestones remember the clatter of boots, the scrape of gates pulled from their hinges, the rumble of wagon wheels tipped and dragged. The fences remember the tug of ropes, the slam of boys' shoulders as they lifted, the laughter that followed. Even the doors remember, their knockers rattled, their wood pounded, their frames quivering under mischief's force. These impressions are not erased by stillness. They linger like faint heat after fire, like breath after a sigh. The frost, sharp and white, is not only a sign of cold. It is the seal of the night, a signature pressed across the town's surface. Each silver edge of fence, each glittering blade of grass, each frozen roof tile is a reminder that the season has shifted. October has ended. November has begun. The frost carries with it the weight of transition, the certainty of change, the promise of winter's approach. And yet, frost is also beautiful. In moonlight it gleams like glass dust scattered across the earth. It turns the ordinary into the extraordinary, a fence rail into silver, a rooftop into crystal, a cobblestone into a mirror of stars. The mischief of the night leaves scars, yes, but the frost covers them, softens them, transforms them into part of a scene that will be remembered, not with anger, but with awe. Morning will bring the work of repair. Fathers will rise with weary bones and trudge into the cold. They will gather tools, lift gates back onto hinges, right wagons left sprawling in fields, coax chickens back into their coops. They will mutter. They will sigh, but their voices will carry that note of ritual. The same tone used each year, the same phrases repeated like refrains. Boys will be scolded, their ears reddening under words, but the sparkle in their eyes will not dim. Out of sight, they will laugh again, recounting each prank, each daring act, boasting of courage, exaggerating feats, until mischief becomes legend. Mothers will sweep porches, rub frost from panes, tidy the remnants of pranks, all while shaking their heads and muttering. They grow wilder every year, yet beneath their complaint is something else. Tolerance, even pride, for they too were children once, and they too remember the thrill of license granted only on this night. This balance between indulgence and restraint, between order and chaos, is the essence of Halloween. The Victorians knew it, even if they did not name it. The night was not truly whole without both halves. The parlor with its order, and the street with its disorder. Together, they formed the full shape of the holiday. The parlor was reflective, filled with games layered with meaning, with stories steeped in tradition, with rituals designed to reveal fate. It was controlled, framed, ritualized. The street was wild, filled with daring and laughter, with tricks that risked anger but rarely crossed into cruelty. It was unframed, uncontained, spilling beyond boundaries. Together, they created the dual nature of Halloween, one half inward, one half outward, both feeding the same hunger for thresholds. That was the secret heart of the season. Halloween was not fixed, but liminal, standing between autumn's abundance and winter's scarcity, between warmth and cold, light and darkness, between harvest gathered and harvest gone, between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. Victorians understood thresholds. Their entire age was one of transition, of old ways giving way to new, of steam and electricity transforming life, of science advancing into mysteries once held by religion. They lived in a world where the old and the new coexisted uneasily, and they were fascinated by spaces where certainty blurred. Halloween was their mirror, a night when certainty was always blurred, when every action carried double meaning, when the ordinary became extraordinary. The food told this story. Apples, humble as they were, became more than fruit. They were oracles. Their peels spelled initials, their skins revealed names, their presence on a table spoke of orchards and harvests and futures, yet unseen. Nuts, too, became more than food. Their cracking was sound, but also omen. Their flames in fire signals of devotion or discord. Bread was sustenance, but when charms were baked within, it became prophecy. Even molasses cookies, simple and sturdy, told a story of class, of economy, of families united in taste, despite difference in wealth. Every action doubled. Every detail deepened. Nothing was only what it seemed. And then the stories, always the stories. The phantom ship stood between storm and omen. The widow's lantern stood between sorrow and haunting. The knock on the window stood between imagination and fear. Each tale straddled two realities, each one reminding its listeners that the world was never as firm as it appeared, each one carrying within it questions that could not be silenced. Does death end love? Do spirits linger? Do signs foretell fate? The Victorians asked these questions openly, not only through Halloween, but through the entire culture of spiritualism. Parlors across England and America hosted seances. Families placed hands on tables, waiting for knocks, listening for voices. Mediums spoke in trances. Photographs claimed to capture shadows of the dead. Scientists and skeptics scoffed, yet attendance only grew, because the hunger was not for proof alone, but for participation, for ritual, for the chance to lean close to the veil, even if the veil did not lift. Halloween offered the same, but gentler. Not seances with solemn faces, but ghost stories with laughter following fear. Not proof demanded, but possibility entertained. Not belief required, but imagination indulged. It was ritual in disguise, comfort in the form of entertainment, and that is why it endured. For Halloween gave voice to questions no one could answer. What waits beyond death? What unseen forces guide life? What part of fate lies in our hands? And what part lies in chance, in charm, in peel, in flame? These questions have never left humanity, and they will never leave. What changes is how each age dresses them. The Victorians dressed them in apples and nuts, in bread and molasses, in ghost stories and games. They carried the questions into the night, allowed them to be voiced, and then folded them back into memory when morning came. And so the night closed. Yet in its closing was promise. The frost that lay across fences and roofs was not merely the mark of October's end, but the opening of November's season. All Saints, All Souls, days of remembrance, of honouring those gone, of carrying their memory forward. Halloween was the threshold. November was the step beyond. Now the lanterns are gone, the parlour is still, the town lies under frost. Halloween of 1890 has ended, yet its story has not. Each retelling, each memory, each echo in another parlour, another home, another century, keeps it alive. And so, dear listener, you are part of this chain. You carry it now. The laughter, the games, the ghost stories, the flicker of lamplight, the frost that glittered under moon, the sound of wagons tipped and righted. You carry them because they were carried to you through history, through tradition, through story, and you too will pass them on. This is Halloween. Not only a night, but a story. Not only a memory, but a heritage. Not only an ending, but a continuation. Close your eyes. Let the fire fade. Let the lantern darken. Rest. The night belongs now to dreams. Halloween has ended, but its spirit lingers in memory, in ritual, in history, and it always will. The story of Halloween in 1890 does not conclude with midnight. It does not dissolve when the last candle gutters out, nor when frost silvers the town, nor when the final guest takes their leave and the parlour folds back into shadow. For nights such as these are not bound by the turning of clocks. They are lived once, yes, but they are lived again each time. Memory stirs them awake. Imagine again the parlour, silent now, but alive in recollection. The wallpaper, hidden and dark, is still heavy with the echo of voices. Its roses and vines, deep in hue, hold laughter like pressed flowers in a book. The piano, though its keys rest untouched, still trembles faintly with memory. Its wood carries vibrations long stilled, yet not forgotten. Chairs stand as though waiting, their cushions shaped by the figures who leaned forward, who folded arms, who shifted with unease or delight, and the sideboard, though bare, still glows in memory with apples, bread, nuts, cookies, cider. The food has gone, but its spirit remains, etched into the senses of those who gathered. The house breathes differently now. It has absorbed the evening. The walls hum with story. The floors whisper with remembered footsteps. The ceilings bow slightly, as if they still listen for secrets told beneath them. Tomorrow the house will open its shutters to daylight, will welcome in the ordinariness of morning. But it will not be the same house it was before Halloween. For houses remember, and memory lingers. Step into the street. The town lies hushed, blanketed by frost, and yet silence is not emptiness. The cobblestones hum with the ghost of boots and laughter. Fences lean into the memory of ropes pulled taut. Gates remember the strain of hinges giving way. Doors recall the sharp rattle of knockers clanged by mischievous hands. These impressions are faint but enduring, stitched into the fabric of place as surely as mortar binds stone. The frost itself is witness. Each fence rail, edged with silver, each roof glimmering faintly beneath the pale moon. Each blade of grass crusted with white testifies to the shift of season. October has ended. November has begun. Frost is both closure and opening. It seals the night and ushers in the new. And though it chills, it also beautifies. Mischief scars tipped wagons, dragged gates, scrawled windows, are softened beneath its shimmer. What was rough is made graceful. What was wild is touched by stillness. Morning brings work. Fathers emerge with tools, muttering as they right wagons and rehang gates. Their voices are stern, but their eyes glint with humor. Boys, chastised, bow heads, but their hearts swell with pride at daring. Mothers sweep porches, gather scattered things, rub frost from panes, and sigh the familiar sigh of ritual complaint. Every year wilder, they say, and yet beneath it lies tolerance. For Halloween without disorder is not Halloween. This balance, parlor and street, order and chaos, is the essence of the night. Without the parlor, the holiday loses depth. Without the street, it loses edge. Together, they create the fullness of the season, reflecting the deeper truth that Halloween is not fixed, but liminal. It dwells between autumn's harvest and winter's scarcity, between warmth and cold, between life and death, between rule and rebellion, between the known and the unknown. It is neither fully one nor the other. It is both at once. That is its fascination. That is its endurance. The Victorians, more than most, were drawn to liminality. Their century was a bridge. Steam and telegraph altered life. Electricity flickered into homes. Medicine advanced, yet superstition endured. Ghost stories flourished alongside scientific journals. They loved thresholds, those places where boundaries blurred. Halloween was not merely amusement. It was reflection, ritual, and disguise. Even food told this story. Apples nourished, but also foretold. Nuts were eaten, but also read for omens. Bread filled bellies, but also delivered fate through hidden charms. Cookies were treats, but also symbols of class and community. Every object bore double weight. The stories carried the same truth. The phantom ship balanced weather and omen. The widow's lantern balanced grief and haunting. The midnight knock balanced reason and fear. Each tale bridged the ordinary and the extraordinary. Each one carried questions never silenced. Do spirits linger? Does death end love? Can the future be glimpsed? Spiritualism offered one answer. Sermons, mediums, letters from the beyond. But Halloween offered another. Gentler, safer, cloaked in laughter. It allowed people to brush against mystery without being consumed. It let questions live without demanding answers. That is why it endured. Halloween endures because it sings the questions all people share. What waits after death? What unseen forces walk beside us? How much belongs to fate, and how much to our choices? These questions are timeless, and each age dresses them differently. Victorians dressed them in apples and firelight, in nuts and bread, in ghost stories told by lamplight. They carried them into the night, and let them dissolve back into memory when morning came. And so the night closed. Yet, closing was not ending. Frost across rooftops was not merely October's farewell, but November's greeting. All Saints, All Souls, days of remembrance, Days of continuity. Halloween was threshold. November was crossing. Now the lanterns are gone. The parlor rests in shadow. The town sleeps under frost. Halloween of 1890 has ended. Yet the story lives, each retelling, each memory, each echo in another parlor, another home, another century keeps it alive. And you, listener, are part of this chain. You carry it now. The laughter, the fortunes, the ghost stories, the frost, the wagons tipped, the knockers rattled. You carry them because they were given to you, across generations, through tradition and tale, and you, too, will pass them forward. This is Halloween. Not merely a night, but a story. Not merely memory, but heritage. Not merely ending, but continue. So close your eyes. Let the fire fade. Let the lantern darken. Rest. The night is finished. But Halloween lingers, in memory, in ritual, in history, and always, always